I remember when I was just 8 years old and I was playing at the playground at the school across the street from where I lived. And I loved playing on the monkey bars. And while most kids were normally just going across the monkey bars, one rung at a time from one side to the other, I chose to do something different on this one particular day. I set out to accomplish the goal of doing a flip off of this monkey bar. Welcome to the Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists podcast. I am Kim Gross, your host, and it is my mission to help you unmask from people pleasing and perfectionistic behaviors so that you can finally have the confidence to live the life that you truly desire. Let's tune in to this week's episode. Now, mind you, 8 years old, not that big, and the monkey bar is about 10 feet off the ground. I decided I was going to hoist my body to the top of the monkey bars. So I pulled myself up through the first set of rungs, got to the point where I was halfway above it, swung my legs so that I was sitting on top of the monkey bars. Then I turned myself over onto my stomach so that I was perpendicular to the monkey bar. I won't lie, I was scared shitless. I was scared because I was 10 feet up in the air and I was afraid to fall and get hurt. But my determination to challenge myself was stronger than any fear of height that I had. Once I got into position, I moved myself toward the edge. Holding onto the cold metal bars, I once again nervously looked down and I stared at the ground. I looked to see if anyone was watching, and realizing that I was alone, I feared that if I fell and got hurt, no one was going to be there to help me. After just a few more moments of sitting there, I propelled my body forward and I let go of the bars. And I flipped until I landed on my feet. And as I realized that I pushed through my fear and accomplished what I set out to do, I felt like I had superpowers. I felt like I was capable of doing anything. Today, I'm doing a solo episode as my book, Free to Be, A Pathway to Inner Liberation, is coming out really soon. And I'm super, super excited about this. On October 1st, pre orders begin, which means that you can go to my website. I'll have the link in the show notes and you can sign up to pre order. Now, here is the deal. If you pre order on October 1st or from October 1st through the 15th, you will get a free bonus just for pre ordering. And then October 15th, the book will be released and it's live and you can purchase it. If you do choose to get my book, Free to Be, A Pathway to Inner Liberation, and you have any feedback for me on the book, I would love it. You can always just email me. All right, so getting back to my story, I had this feeling that I had superwoman powers, that I could do anything. And then I continued to do other things like climb to the top of a swing set at my school. And this, again, was something like 15, 20 feet off the ground. And I would shimmy to the top of it and then just do like a flip or a somersault across the top of the bar. Forget about freaking just swinging on the swings. I had to keep challenging myself to do something that was super challenging. But here is the reason why I share this story, because in those days, in those moments when I did believe I was capable of doing anything, I really felt like I could be Superwoman or I could be the next Dorothy Hamill in figure skating or a professional gymnast. I used to think that I could become a professional singer slash dancer just because I performed for my mom in the kitchen and she was like my best raving fan. Mind you, I cannot carry a tune to save my life, and I don't have a ton of rhythm. So That was probably not going to happen. That I had the belief in myself that I was capable of doing anything. And I am sure that you too had something similar, that you had a belief or a feeling that you could be anything and be anyone. You might have believed you would be a ballerina or a police officer, the president of the United States, whatever it was. I bet you that you shared that same belief that I had in myself. Now, what happens? Where did that go? This is what I talk about with masks off. And this is why I have this mask off mission, because we start to learn and we start getting told that we're not capable, we're not good enough. And we might hear, who do you think you are that you can shine your light to be blah, 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 blah. And because we're young and we are impressionable, we start to believe, okay, maybe I'm not good enough to do these things. And then we start to compare, especially in middle school and high school, like those teenage years. We really start to compare ourselves to our peers. I can remember when I played soccer in ninth grade. I desperately wanted to play forward, and I was only allowed to play defense because I wasn't good enough or told that I wasn't good enough to play forward. So I had to play the supportive role and be on defense. And the same thing happened to me when I played softball. I wanted to play first base or I wanted to be a pitcher. Guess where I played? Right field. And I should be happy. Not watch, I'm not going to shit on myself. One would think that you would be happy to just be playing, but at the end of the day, the message that I was receiving is that I wasn't good enough. And so when we have that message going on over and over again, we start to wear masks and we start to cover up who we are. So I share in my book, and I want to share this with you as to why we start to even wear masks and create patterns. And so I write in the beginning, we developed patterns as a strategy to cope with difficult situations as a way of protecting ourselves. We believed at one time that it wasn't safe to be who we truly were, so we covered up who we truly were with masks. The masks are a representation of our patterns. They develop early in life as we learn to hide our true thoughts and feelings. Many who feared rejection and abandonment as children began putting on masks. To be clear, we had no idea that we were doing this. It happened subconsciously. So, anytime a moment arises that we feel it's not safe to be who we are, we put on a mask. And so this is how the whole concept of wearing masks transfers into one of patterns. And eventually we just keep repeating it and we don't even realize that we are living out patterns because it just feels so familiar and so natural to be this way. I feel like it's important to really talk about taking off masks because I know that we can repeat generational patterns if we're not mindful, if we're not aware, and we're not careful. And because I wore the perfection mask and the people pleaser mask, I know that my patterns I projected those onto my kids when they were younger. Because at the time, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that I needed to really just focus on their worthiness. I didn't know that I needed to just shine the light on who they truly are. And I would focus on the things that were wrong or the things that they weren't doing. which is the same thing that my mom did to me. I repeatedly heard throughout my childhood that I was wrong for thinking a certain way. I was wrong for feeling a certain way. I was wrong for believing a certain way. In particular, when the way that I thought, felt, and believed did not line up with hers. And as kids, we can often, when we hear that we're wrong, internalize that as we're inherently bad. At least that was the experience for me. I know that to a certain degree that I did the same with my own kids, that I repeated that pattern until I knew better. When I started learning about what I was doing, then I started to do my own inner work. I started to heal my patterns. I started to recognize when I was wearing a mask. And then I started showing up more authentically with my kids. And when I started masks off 4.5 years ago, my kids were old enough to understand what that concept meant. And so whenever I was showing up in an inauthentic way or I was showing up from my old patterns, my kids would say, "Mom, take off your mask, take your mask off." And I'm really grateful that we could have that laugh together, that inside joke together, because it meant that they understood what wearing a mask is all about. Now, did they already have like enough quote unquote damage done to them from my unconscious parenting? Yeah, they did. Yep, to a certain extent. But they are way more aware of wearing masks at their young age than I even was. I had no idea that I was even doing this. Once again, we subconsciously carry out or live out these patterns, and we end up living out patterns and not a life. We're not really being our true selves. We're just living according to these patterns. And so the really sad part about this is that many of us, many of our parents, our grandparents, and generations before us, and even currently and generations after, will unfortunately go their entire lifetime just living out patterns and not even knowing what it is like to be their true selves. And that's one of the number one deathbed regrets that people have, is that they didn't show up as their true selves. They regret that they just couldn't be themselves fully, unapologetically, authentically. And so it's because many people just didn't even realize that they were just living out a pattern and wearing masks. So that's why I feel that this work is so incredibly important to help others recognize, become aware. Is this particular behavior or way that you are thinking or a belief system, is this really you? Or is this just a pattern that you've been living out? To really understand more fully about why we wear masks and about living out patterns and not a life, I outline in great depth in my book. Once again, it's Free to Be, A Pathway to Inner Liberation. And I hope that you'll grab your copy. You can go to my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. You can get all that you need to know about the book on my website. There's also a quiz. If you want to find out if you're a people pleaser or a perfectionist, you can take my quiz. And then my email's there so you can connect with me through email. You can connect with me on social media as well. So I hope that this was helpful, and I will see you next time on Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. Have a great week.